Change has come to the NWSL. Massive news breaking that the league and the Players Association have agreed to a new collective bargaining agreement that will be in place until 2030. So let's look at some of the major changes that we can expect. Increased freedom of movement, no player drafts. That is probably the biggest ones. Players now being able to choose where they want to go instead of blind trading or so. Higher salary cap. We stand for that increase in minimum salaries, expanded parental leave and childcare benefits as well. That is absolutely brilliant. Well, let's hear what Jessica Berman had to say, and the NWSL commissioner. She says, given our vision to be the best league in the world, we determined that this was the right time to align with global standards and achieve long-term labor peace. This CBA gives us agency over our business and gives the players agency over their careers. Our new agreement revolutionizes the game, raises standards, and innovates the business. On behalf of the Board of Governors, I want to thank our players and their representatives, leadership at the NWSLPA for working together to make this possible.
And with that being said, joining us, Meghann Burke, our Executive Director of the NWSL Players Association, to talk about this incredible new agreement. Welcome in, Meghann. Thank you so much for your time. We appreciate you being here with us. Firstly, I just want to ask, what is a significant impact compared to the last CBA and now implementing this new CBA that you want to talk about?
Well, Ali, first of all, thank you for having me. I'm a fan of the show, so it's great to be with you all tonight. The first contract was important in that it was the first, and it for the first time in NWSL history, established free agency rights. And this contract, we were able to build on that. Although I would say we made pretty substantial progress in a fairly short period of time. This would have been just the third year of a 5-year deal in our first contract. But I appreciate that NWSL, the Board of Governors, the teams, we're all prepared to level up to the global standard and make really progressive changes to the way we do business in order to compete with the rest of the world.
And how did the NWSLPA and the league address the player concerns and make this a priority now?
So, and I apologize if you hear my dog barking in the background. I was like, I'm going to have to scoot over. There's no way to pretend that's not happening, but I'm going to carry on.
Life is lifing. Life is life.
Life is life. That's right. Life is lifing. So, the league had sent us a letter last summer coming out of the 2023 World Cup. I think there was something undeniably true about the results of that tournament. Obviously, we had a different result in this Olympic cycle. But the U.S., Canada, and Brazil, three of the countries that produce the largest number of internationals in our league, were knocked out of the World Cup prematurely, in our view. So they came to us and said, listen, we acknowledge that some of the things you guys have been saying are undeniably true. The world is passing us by. And we need to make some significant changes if we're going to keep up. So they identified the issues that were important to them in their letter. We then responded in kind where, we have a saying like always be closing, like always be ready. So we were ready to go when we received that letter to identify the issues that would be important to us to address. And of course, you've just on the slide, you've shown player movement was definitely a headline issue that needed to be addressed.
And as a former player, obviously I know I'm retired now, but this would have been such a huge benefit because two things that stood out to me were the no trade clause, because that has happened to me before, going from Washington Spirit to Orlando and only finding out online 20 minutes beforehand on Twitter. Unfortunately, I was definitely one of those players in that group. And then also, the family benefits plan is really encouraging. So how did the players react to that? And why was that really important to fight for?
Well, I mean, you said it about the no trade clause. We heard horror stories from players who read about it on Twitter, had to uproot their lives and make a cross-country move on very short notice. And I think what's important to acknowledge is that people have lives. They're not just one-dimensional athletes. And so both the no trade clause and actually the family building benefits provisions acknowledge that there's a lived experience in this league. It's not just as simple as you show up and play soccer. Getting traded without your consent means that you may not know what's coming. It comes as a surprise. So consent requires some early conversations and an agreement with the club that maybe things aren't working out at that club anymore and it's time to make a change. And the family building benefits and parental leave provisions allow players to not have to choose between being a parent or a player. Of course, you were able to become a parent during the course of your playing career, and you know how hard it is. Being a working mom in this world is difficult, and I appreciate that the league was ready to make some substantial changes and provide some benefits that would make it possible for players either to have children while they're playing, or with the family building benefits provision, to be able to take measures now and take steps, for example, freezing your eggs or looking at IVF or surrogacy, to be able to think about having children when your playing career is over.
No, I think it's wonderful, and it gives players that feeling of comfortability and confidence that they have that support. And so this is such an incredible impact, a positive impact moving forward. But also, are there any specific clauses or benefits in the new CBA that you believe will have a positive impact on player welfare?
A number of them. So, increasing medical staff to improve the day-to-day workload management for players is really important. We've secured some provisions around the staff that are required to travel with teams now. Accessing your players' own data is really important. So we beefed up the player access provisions and notice and privacy rights around data. A number of our players, that was a really important issue to them, and maybe one of those kind of nerdy issues you can get in the weeds on, but they want to see how they're performing, how they're recovering, so that year over year they can continue to improve and develop. Charter flights were certainly important, managing workload. We're going to see an increase in the number of games that players are having to play with the Club World Cup and CONCACAF W, the La Liga MX Femenina tournament, expansion coming on. And so if we're going to grow the business, we also have to manage player health and safety. I would say another piece of this contract that's interesting, it's really exciting for us, and I think is going to factor into some of these other things we're talking about, is revenue sharing. Now players feel like they own a piece of the business, and this is very much, it's aligning incentives with the league so that we're all trying to grow this thing together.
So I know the feedback from I think my position and talking to other players, they have been so thrilled and so excited about these new opportunities being presented to them. And like I said before, they feel the positive impact and the growth and everything. But internally, what have you seen as feedback, and what can you report from that side of things?
Yeah, players are, honestly, the word that comes to mind is relief. It's interesting that it's joy, but it's relief that now moving forward, particularly for players who've been on semi-guaranteed contracts, knowing that their contracts are going to be guaranteed moving forward if an option's exercised or they sign a new contract beginning January 1st, 2025, they can make a commitment to the team, and the team is making a commitment to them. And I think it's going to foster a healthier team culture. We're going to see unique identities emerge out of these clubs as they construct rosters with a long-term plan in place, and not just what things look like this week or this month. So I think it's relief, but it's also, this news, we negotiated this contract in early July. We held on it during the Olympics. We wanted to respect the importance of the world's attention being on the Olympics. And because it wasn't public, a lot of players were like, is this real? Did this happen? Did we actually do this? So I think this week has been very fun for us, that it's finally public. It feels real. When a player asks us a question, like, for example, I got a question recently, like, do I need to know if I'm on a discovery list? Who's thinking about coming here? I was like, it's gone. No, you're just a free agent. And so I think relief is the word that comes to mind most of all, but definitely joy.
And lastly, how do you see the new CBA affecting the growth and development of the league? Obviously, you've mentioned a few items that are extremely important in player safety and the revenue sharing, and then obviously trade clauses. But how do you see the development and growth of this new CBA and the NWSL for years to come?
Well, this is one of those contracts where it was a win-win for everyone all the way around. Usually management wants a longer contract and the union wants a shorter contract. But in this instance now, especially with revenue sharing and having made the substantial changes to players' rights and player movement that we have, the next media rights deal is very significant and very important to the future of this league. And so now that the NWSL has a CBA with us through 2030, that gives them a runway to go out and maximize the value of those rights. And by maximizing the value of those rights, players in turn will benefit through revenue sharing. So one of the things I think all of us can feel really good about is that this is a deal that kind of the rising tide lifts all boats thing, where it's good for all of us, it's good for the business, it's good for players.
Thank you so much, Meghann, for all the work that you do behind the scenes. I've seen it day in and day out, and the league and the players are so lucky to have you to lean on. Thank you for bringing that leadership to the league and these players. They feel that safety, they feel that support, and we appreciate you joining us tonight to help, explain why the CBA and this new CBA agreement is so important for the league to grow in the direction that we all want it to.
Well, Allie, that really means a lot to me. Thank you. It's a privilege to get to serve in this role and represent players like you. So thank you.
Absolutely groundbreaking there too. And it's so interesting because I have to now, of course, ask you just your reactions for it, because we saw some images there of the draft, and now that is a thing of the past. That's no more, gone out the door, like texts from your exes. But it's crazy too, because it's the first, now the NWSL is the first major American professional sporting league that will not have a draft. That is historical, that is groundbreaking as well. And once again, women's soccer paving the way. It's a huge moment.
But I think it's what every other league in the world is doing. This is the model that we should be having. This is the model that should be in existence. There shouldn't be a draft. People should be able to decide where they want to live, where they enjoy, you know, anywhere around the country where they want to develop in their career and also put themselves in a position, you know, to get better and to surround themselves with players who they want to play with and coaches who they want to be coached by. And I think this gives everyone that opportunity. I think when you have a draft and you're kind of just set off into, you know, any city that you could possibly just get thrown into, you don't really have that choice of, you know, how you can develop to make it to the goals that you really want to achieve. And I think with this, everyone has that choice, and you kind of have more of a control of your career, which is also very comforting for players.
Yeah, because I mean, I think even when we speak about, you know, men's football and we internationally for clubs, the amount of times I've interviewed so many footballers, you know, about their transfers, and they say, you know, had to check with the missus, had to make sure there was a good school district, thinking of the kids. And you're thinking that how, you know, women on this side of the world did not have that option. As you said, you know, you find out on Twitter 20 minutes before. Imagine that, and I don't even check Twitter.
Right. It's really difficult. And also to just not get that information, I think, from the club and have that, you know, transparency, I think was really difficult for me, especially being, you know, the captain of the team and, you know, that being my hometown. It's really hard for a lot of players to get settled, and then however many months later, all of a sudden you have to uproot and move all of your stuff across the country, you know, without any reasoning. And so this is really a great step forward. And I think for a lot of players, you can have comfort knowing, okay, when you sign on the dotted line, this is the contract for 2 years or 3 years, and this is where I'm going to be, and this is where I can like set roots somewhere. And I think for us, that's a comfort feeling, because any other job in any other industry in the world, that's what you're able to do. Yes. Is it a business? It is. But I think when you sign on the dotted line and you sign for a certain amount of years, you should know that that is your job for that certain amount of time. And I think this is really, really exciting for the league moving forward.
One thing I'm a fan of too in that, they have more access to charter flights. I stand charter flights. Give my queens their charter flights.